As the 2024 election season reaches a boiling point, a new wave of speculation surrounds Donald Trump, his inner circle, and a so-called super-secret plan to contest the election results. Trump has hinted at a covert agreement with House Speaker Mike Johnson, leaving political analysts and the public concerned about whether the former president, with Johnson's help, is maneuvering to manipulate the election outcome. In recent public appearances, Trump has teased a little secret that he and Johnson intend to reveal post-election, stoking fears that this may be a prelude to yet another attempt to cast doubt on the democratic process. But what does this plan entail, and is it likely to succeed? This video delves into the facts and possibilities around this rumored contingent election strategy, or contingent election plot. We will explore Trump's comments, what a contingent election involves, and why this strategy has garnered widespread attention. Additionally, we'll examine the role of Speaker Mike Johnson and what Democrats and independent watchdogs are doing to counter what some view as a potential coup attempt. Is this just political posturing, or is there a real cause for concern? This video offers an in-depth, clear-eyed look at this issue, unpacking Trump's claims, evaluating the contingent election strategy under the 12th Amendment, and ultimately assessing the feasibility and implications of this super-secret plan. Chapter 1. Trump's speech and the super-secret plan. In a rally held at New York's Madison Square Garden, Trump made headlines by alluding to a confidential plan he shares with Mike Johnson. In his words, "Our little secret is having a big impact." These statements, given at a charged political event, hint at a coordinated strategy aimed at leveraging the House of Representatives, where Republicans currently hold sway. Trump's suggestive language implies that he and Speaker Johnson have a post-elections backup plan ready, one that will only be revealed if and when the election results do not favor Trump. This section explores Trump's remarks in full and the context behind them, highlighting the key phrases that have stirred a national conversation about potential election interference and constitutional manipulation. We will analyze why Trump's language resonates with supporters and whether it hints at a genuine, concrete plot or is merely a rallying tactic designed to rally his base ahead of a contentious election season. Chapter 2. The concept of a contingent election. To understand the gravity of Trump's alleged plan, one must first grasp what a contingent election is. Under the U.S. Constitution's 12th Amendment, if no presidential candidate receives the majority of electoral votes, currently set at 270, the election is decided by the House of Representatives. In a contingent election, each state delegation gets one vote, rather than each representative voting individually. Since there are more Republican-controlled states, this could theoretically give Trump an edge even if he doesn't win the popular vote or a majority of the electoral votes. This section examines the historical background of the 12th Amendment, the conditions required for a contingent election to take place, and how Trump and Johnson might seek to exploit these provisions. We'll also review past instances where contingent elections were considered or attempted, providing valuable context for understanding the risks and limits of this approach. Chapter 3. How the 2020 election offers a blueprint for Trump's strategy. The origins of this contingent election strategy can be traced back to the 2020 election, where Trump and his allies pressured then Vice President Mike Pence not to certify the electoral votes. This chapter unpacks the tactics used in 2020, drawing parallels between the strategies discussed then and the rhetoric surrounding the 2024 election. We'll explore statements from Trump's associates, legal arguments made in 2020, and how the former president's team attempted to justify overriding the electoral count process. In addition, this section explores why the January 6th attack on the Capitol has left a lasting impact on how both parties approach election security and legitimacy. By examining these events, we gain insights into how a similar plan might be executed or resisted in 2024 and the legal frameworks that Democrats and election officials might employ to prevent a repeat of 2020. Chapter 4. The role of Speaker Mike Johnson in Trump's plan. With Mike Johnson at the helm as House Speaker, Trump appears to have a powerful ally who could influence the certification of electoral votes. Johnson, a staunch Trump supporter, was instrumental in opposing the certification of the 2020 election results, further signaling his alignment with Trump's approach. This chapter delves into Johnson's political history, his stance on election integrity, and how his role as Speaker could be leveraged to delay or deny certification in a close or contested 2024 election. This analysis also includes recent statements from Johnson, his interactions with Trump, and how his legislative agenda reflects the priorities of the MAGA movement. We'll evaluate Johnson's potential power as Speaker to block or stall the electoral process, examining both legal and procedural limitations on his authority. Chapter 5: Democratic Responses and Legal Countermeasures. In response to Trump's claims and Johnson's potential role in a contested election, key Democrats like Representative Dan Goldman have voiced concerns and called for action. Goldman and other Democrats have cited previous efforts to challenge the electoral process and argue that this time they are prepared with a comprehensive plan to protect the election's integrity. This section reviews the statements and actions taken by Democratic leaders, federal prosecutors, and election reform advocates to counter potential election interference. It explores legislative proposals aimed at securing the certification process, including updates to the Electoral Count Act and state-level protections. Additionally, we'll discuss the role of state governors, secretaries of state, and judicial recourse in mitigating any attempts to delay or disrupt the certification process. Chapter 6: The Supreme Court and Judicial Outlook. Should Trump and Johnson pursue this plan, legal battles are almost certain to ensue, potentially reaching the Supreme Court. With a conservative-leaning bench, many worry that a Trump-aligned House Speaker might successfully argue for a contingent election if the case is brought before the court. This chapter explores how recent Supreme Court decisions, judicial precedents, and the views of individual justices could play into a decision on a contested 2024 election. We'll also examine hypothetical scenarios, including the court's options if the House fails to certify electoral votes, and the potential for the judicial branch to act as an arbiter in what could become a constitutional crisis. Chapter 7: The Implications of the Contingent Election Plot. Beyond the immediate election, the contingent election plot carries profound implications for democracy and trust in the U.S. electoral system. This chapter takes a step back to assess the broader impacts of Trump's alleged plan. We'll consider the potential effects on public trust, international perceptions of American democracy, and the precedent such an action would set for future elections. We'll also explore opinions from constitutional scholars, political scientists, and former government officials who have weighed in on the risks of politicizing election certification. Finally, this section considers the worst-case scenarios. What might happen if public faith in electoral institutions erodes, and what could this mean for future presidential contests? As the 2024 election approaches, the prospect of a super-secret plan between Donald Trump and Mike Johnson casts a long shadow over the democratic process. While Trump's hints at a contingency plan may stir anxiety among his critics and bolster his support base, the question remains: can such a strategy realistically alter the outcome? Or will the protections embedded in the democratic process prove resilient enough to withstand this latest challenge? Ultimately, this analysis underscores the importance of vigilance and transparency in safeguarding election integrity. The possibility of a contested election and the involvement of a partisan Speaker of the House highlights the need for both legal preparedness and public awareness. In the end, Trump's plan, whether strategic or rhetorical, serves as a reminder of the stakes involved in the 2024 election and the enduring struggle for the future of American democracy.